Hi guys. Please say hi in the comments if you are watching. And I it is my greatest heart's desire to actually speak to your heart today, to speak to these issues. And this whole month has been so beautiful. I just I mean, sometimes the group goes through its own seasons, right? Ebbs and flows, and sometimes there's not a whole lot of talking or discussion, but this month has not been one of those months. I have just seen so much beauty shared. If you didn't check it out, we have a chat going. That's like a new Facebook feature. It's called Chat. I think if you go to Women Manifesting Intimacy and look up across the top, there's a little button that says chat, and you can click on it there. And it's the one that says heal the earth of toxic sexuality or something like that. I had to limit that what it was called. But anyway, there's a beautiful conversation going in there, and then just a lot of really tender responses to me sharing my sacred journey, and then a lot of beautiful supportive responses in the questions that I've been posing to you all about sex drive and all the things. And so today the intention is to bring it all together, and it's my intention again on this call that you watch this and you feel like something shifts for you, something speaks to you, a new perspective comes in for you around your sacred sexuality and reclaiming your own sensuality, and deepening your intimacy and your awareness of the truth of who you really are and your feminine intuition. Those are the things I am a stand for on the planet. If you're new here and you're like, who is this person? What is going on here? I'm Melissa, and I have been doing this work for about 5 years. I've honed and refined, this message to these specific three core pillars of intimacy, sensuality, and feminine intuition over the years. And I came into this work because of my journey, which you could read at least the sex part on my on in our group. But I came into this because my husband and I had tremendous struggles and difficulties, and I have a ton of childhood trauma and stuff in my past that ultimately led me into relationships and feeling completely free of tools, no capacity, no capacity to be enough in this marriage, as a mother, and then as a leader in the world. I always have felt like there was something big I was supposed to do, and just felt so like I've had to wade through a gigantic forest that was all within me to get to be happy in my marriage, be happy as a mother, and then actually be a voice that can help and support people. Does anybody relate with that? Like the journey to actually feeling like you're living in purpose feels like wading through a giant dark forest. Ah! I feel tired by that because there's layers and layers of it, aren't there? And more recently, I would say in the last year, I've really realized through running my business and helping a lot of couples, and then focusing on trying to scale my message and the business and all of that. I've also found that there's a tremendous amount of effort in the organizations and systems and cultures and things that we subscribe to around us that are still actively working against us shining bright, whether that's in our sex, in our marriage, as a mother, as a leader, as a whatever, right? There are still lots and lots of forces actively designed not for us to shine, designed for us to fit into boxes and molds. And so I've brought a lot of that teaching now into my work as well. So that's like what you're in store for today. We're going to talk about reclaiming our sensuality now and dive into this. And actually today, I meant to write this in the heading. The last two trainings I've led, I've said we were going to do card pulls, and then I talked too long and we ran out of time. I'm going to do some card pulls if you want them. I'm going to do the card pull on the question, what will help me unlock my next level of abundance with um, sensuality and intimacy. That's what we're going to do, our question. Do I like that? Help me unlock my next level of abundance. Yeah, I like that. Okay. I used the word abundance because that was the card that I pulled right before I got on this call. So I'm going to do those. I'll do those at the end after I talk just a little bit and share some things about unlocking and really reclaiming our sensuality. This is so sacred. And honestly, I feel frustrated. Like, I feel frustrated that the world is still in the condition it's in, because I'm over here marching to and like beating my drum, right? And you guys know, some of you have been in here for a long time and known me for a long time. Like, I am over here beating this drum. I've been beating this drum for years. And I feel like uh, sometimes I take too much responsibility, because I like look at the world and I'm like, there's still a long way to go. The world we live in, right? So this whole discussion kicked off a couple of weeks ago when I shared a post about my daughter's dance competition. Anybody read that post, daughter's dance competition? I just got so friggin' triggered and upset. And I used to look at my triggers, well, for a long time, I didn't even know they were triggers, and I just would let them control me. So I would get so upset by the sexualization that I saw in the world that I would just shut down. And I would become a kind of like a soldier, like very like, don't mess with me, toward men particularly, because of the way our society is structured. And my husband bared the brunt of that. I had been hurt already so much by men in my life, and then by society and all the things, since I was so young and was a cheerleader growing up, and and worked so hard in high school to be liked and wanted by the boys, and use that as a measure of my worthiness. Like, gosh, I can remember having conversations with my best friend in I had this little Barbie station wagon car. That's a story for another day. So bad. But anyway, we would sit in my little station wagon, and we would just cry. Like, why don't the boys like us? We're trying so hard. We're, wearing all the things that would make them like us. We're flirting and whatever, but I felt so much like I had to be this other thing than myself, that when boys came around me, I couldn't even speak. I was so terrified. I couldn't even speak. And so it's like, well, of course, because as much as society was telling me this is how you have success with relationships, I was doing all those things. I was doing all the external things. I was friggin' gorgeous, and everybody that knew me called me M Barbie. That's why I had a Barbie car. And yet my inside experience was like, these boys don't value me. They don't care. They don't cherish me by any means. My maiden name growing up was Melissa Click, and the boys called me Melissa Clit. And it was so painful. And probably the first several years that started happening, I didn't even know what clit meant. That's a whole nother part of the problem, right? Like, and I share these stories because I know you have your own story and you relate. And even if you weren't the Barbie, like, and you may have looked at the Barbie in high school, the girl who was like me, and thought, oh, she's got it all. She's got it all figured out. No, I was hurting just as much as the girl who was too fat, and just as much as the girl who was rejected and ignored, and all the things. It looked like I had all the things together. I had, the friends or the whatever, the social circles, and I was crying at night with my best friend, like, why don't the boys like us? And what does this mean for our lives? Like, are we going to be alone forever? Like, and it's like, no, actually, the problem was never me and my body, or you and your body. The problem is the friggin' systems that we have been plopped into, just dropped into. And this has been an ongoing issue forever. I love watching period pieces. Do you guys like these? Like these shows from, reenactments of the 1500s and the 1800s and, in England and in France and all of these things, right? And then, gosh, you watch those and you think about the pressures the women had then. Like our liberties that we experience today, we are babies in experiencing that. And yes, we may have more opportunities in the workplace, and men no longer need to sign off on our bank accounts. I just found out. I spoke with a money woman, side tangent, but not tangent, totally related. Did you know that women since the 80s, in the 80s, women still had to get a man to co-sign for them to open their own bank account? The 80s. I was born in the 80s. That was like yesterday. I was like, what? So we are infants with the kind of freedom and opportunity that we have today. And a lot of the tangible things have changed, but a lot of the systems and the unspoken, the nuances, the culture, that stuff, it's still deeply there, and it's still deeply toxic, and it's terrible, right? I know you have your own stories because I've been reading them all month. Your stories of ways that you have felt shut down around your own sexuality, or ways that you're protecting your daughters from being hypersexualized, and all the different ways everybody's choosing to do different things to try to lead a different life and not perpetuate the pain that we had as children. And I just commend all of you for all of that. But going back to my experience, I would just see all these hypersexualization of things. I would, I'm a married woman. I've got my own children, and I'm trying to create this little sacred space in my home and in my marriage. And even with my own body, that I pretty much started to get to know after I got married. Like, it's insane, right? And I would see these hypersexualized things, and I would just shut down everything in my body. Completely shut down my sex drive, completely shut down my ability to receive touch or to be open to my husband, immediately move into like questioning and more like kind of judgy behavior. I was on defense. I went right onto defense, and my husband was carried the brunt of that. But I will also say I am probably the one that suffered most of all from living in this cycle that I didn't even know I was doing. I didn't know how to break free. Do you guys relate with that? The walls that we put up because of the society that we've been plunged into, a society that does not support us to be open, to be caring, to be loved, to be receptive, to actually receive our partner in a sacred way. There's so many counterfeits in our world, so many counterfeits to sex that we, I think, as a whole, have lost sight of what the beauty of sex, the beauty of sensuality, even the beauty of pleasure. So I wanted to talk about some of the pain that has been there. I want to talk about pleasure. I want to talk about what I call the sacred path of pleasure. So throughout this journey, I also believed that pleasure was bad. And I didn't give myself any space to experience pleasure. I really it's funny because I can remember in the beginning years of my marriage, my husband would say, he would do something or he would say something, and I would say, "Well, why?" I would say, "Why did you do that?" Or, "Why do you believe that?" Which, by the way, like, you ever want to bring out a man's defensiveness, just ask him why. Okay. I would ask him why all the time. I'm a why person. Like, what's the meaning? Explain to me the purpose behind this, right? I'd ask him why, and he would get defensive. But really, I would ask him why, because my husband is like the king of ease and pleasure. Literally, without knowing it, he is driven by what's the next most easy thing that I can do and what's the next thing that is gonna like be enjoyable. And that's what he chooses. Like probably like 90% of his choices are that. Does anybody relate to that? Anybody have a husband like that? They're all different, right? But I would say stereotypically there's probably quite a handful out there of these men who it's like, what's the easy path? I'm going to choose that. And growing up, I was definitely taught that's not how a man's supposed to be. And that's definitely not how I lived my life. You can guarantee I was like, which one's the hardest route? I'll choose that one, right? Every motivational talk I ever heard told me to choose the hard route, right? That was preached at me like part of my religion. Choose the hard thing. And so I always chose hard. And when my husband would look at me and be like, he didn't have a cultural masculine answer to give me, that's why he got defensive. Because usually his answer was like, it was easy, or like, I like it. Like, why do I want to watch this movie? Because it's going to bring me pleasure. Like, it's going to bring me joy and comfort. And I want to. It's going to be good for me. Like, I like it. Those answers were unacceptable to me until I learned pleasure as a value and ease as a value. Those words are values. If we can take away the moralistic judgment from it, like good or bad, right or wrong, it's like, okay, what is pleasure? It's ability to choose into things that please us. Why is that wrong? Where does that come from? Okay, and I'm not going to go into all the ins and outs of places where that comes from. I do a lot of work with that in my clients, and but I just don't want to take up time doing that today. But pleasure is very interesting because it's very connected to our desires. Like what brings me pleasure might not bring you pleasure. What brings my husband pleasure may not bring me pleasure. So when you look at the combination of pleasure and desire, all of a sudden we're talking about something completely different. My greatest heart's desires bring me pleasure. If I follow those, it stands to reason that, and it's unique to me, something guides that. Where do those pleasures and desires come from? Why do I want those things? Okay, and we're not talking about like getting drunk, for example. That might bring you pleasure for a little while, and then later it brings lots of suffering, right? We're not talking about surface level pleasures or surface level desires. We're talking about like things that deeply bring you pleasure, or things that never come with an outcome that you don't like sex with my husband when I really feel it and I really want it, and then I choose into it and I experience all this pleasure, there's no negative outcome in that for me, right? So those are the things we're talking about, pleasure and desire. That's a sacred path. All of a sudden, I realized I was denying God from guiding me. I was denying the spirit from being able to hear it because I was only going to answer the call if it was hard. I was only going to answer the call if it felt like work, because the only way I believed I grew as a person was through work. Only way I believed I could prove my worth as a person was through hard. And so what about when the spirit or when God was prompting me, or even my own inner wisdom was prompting me to choose things that brought more joy into my life? I wasn't listening. Let that settle in, huh? So the path of pleasure, yeah, it's associated to sex, but it's also just like choosing foods that you love, that light you up, that bring you joy. And even in that, there's counterfeits to pleasure, and then there's like true pleasure, right? And that's where we get all convoluted. We're so bombarded by the counterfeits. Everybody knows, okay, don't have an addiction, or okay, I know that I shouldn't be doing those things, right? Or I shouldn't be eating the whole bag of chips or whatever. What we're missing is our own inner gauge to go, what actually does light me up? What actually does let me step deeper into pleasure? True pleasure. And then following those things, because literally that has been what has led me to uh having this career, this whole entire career. Like, you could see now how that relationship between business and healing your sexuality, like, they are correlated. I was laughing because earlier today I posted about our group and that we were going to have this conversation and yada yada in another Facebook group that I'm in. And pretty much what I do when I'm writing posts is I'll just like write the post and write what I like. I'm very like very much like, okay, what feels good to write. And if it starts to feel crunchy or something, sometimes I'll completely stop, or I'll go, oh wait, okay, actually, what is the meaning I want to convey here? And I wait until it feels good. Again, that's my path of pleasure, right? That's how I use that little gauge. And so I'm writing the post and everything. And then I get to the part where I need to figure out what picture to put. And that's literally how I do it. I don't have a system or whatever. And I go into my pictures and go, oh, I hope there's something there that I can use. And I put a picture of me and my daughters. And I thought I might be the only person on the planet who can write a post about sex and still post a picture of me and my daughters. Right? Because you can see, like, this is a space where we can bring the conversations together, because talking about our children and talking about our own healthy sex doesn't have to look like the horrible counterfeits that are out there when people typically bring the conversation of children and sex together. Like, we feel like we have to keep those as completely separate because there have been so many counterfeits that have brought so much damage, when really it's a interwoven discussion. Like, how I be in my body affects 7 generations back and 7 generations forward, right? Quantum energy tells us that. So how I'm being about sex and how I'm approaching my body and how I'm approaching my pleasure, which literally informs how I approach my entire life, my gauge, the way I listen to the spirit and make decisions day by day, is all informed by how I have chosen to heal my sexuality and what my relationship is with that. Whew. I don't often bring so much like scripture and my spirituality and faith and stuff in. I mean, spirituality always, because I don't know how to not be woo woo. But I guess my faith as much into these messages. But lately I've been feeling more and more called to do so. One of the scriptures in Corinthians, and I don't remember the numbers, but it talks about the fruits of the spirit. And it talks about all these good feelings. That's when it really clicked for me. Was like, all these good feelings are the fruits of the spirit. So I know that I'm feeling a spirit when I feel good. Like, wow, where did we get so far off track, right? Believing that like we were just sent to this planet to suffer and endure to the end. I absolutely hate that phrase, endure to the end. Okay. I'm talking about us today, but like then I think about our men and how they must feel. Like, I see so many men who are striving so hard to prove like, hey, I'm one of the good guys. I'm one of the good guys. And we talked about this in the group. So if you saw some of the questions around getting more adventurous in the bedroom, and a lot of people were like, oh, it's my husband actually who's like, no, that's uncomfortable to me. I don't want to do that stuff. And I really believe that's deeply rooted in this. Like, I have to prove I'm one of the good guys. I may have had a secret fantasy about rape forever, and I don't ever want to share it because that makes me one of the bad guys, even though a dynamic where someone is more in charge or more in control, or even kind of like maybe even controlling in a safe setting, it can be really beautiful in a marriage, in the context of agreements and the commitment that you have and the safety that you've created, right? And as a matter of fact, that's why friggin' 50 Shades of Grey is so popular, because women actually crave that. We actually want that. There's some part of us that wants that. That may be triggering for you to hear. Because I know a lot of people who are just like 50 Shades of Grey is the devil, and I get that. Because again, the counterfeits are there and it's yucky, but in a sacred container where you and your partner have talked about all the facets and you've made agreements, that can be so beautiful. But your husband may not feel like he even has permission to ever speak that. And it might not even have anything to do with you. It could be things that, you've said throughout the years that have perpetuated a belief that already existed for him, that any of those kinds of things that he might want are bad. I mean, another example of that where my husband has been so sweet is I love being treated like a little girl. Probably because my dad died. It honestly probably comes from trauma. I don't care. It came from trauma. When I was 12, my dad died. And so I didn't get to be treated like a sweetheart anymore after I was 12. My daddy was my beloved daddy. Like, I still call him daddy because he just was so sweet to me, right? And so I love being treated like a little girl. And like, that's part of our sex play, is like, I want him to be like, you're such a good little girl, or like, treat me like a little girl. And it's hard for him. He's like, okay, I'll try. It's taken him years to be able to do that, because he's like, I never want to come across like I am a pedophile, right? And it's like, okay, so our men, right, how they must feel as we go through all these things. They're plunged into the same stupid society that's all broken and full of counterfeits. I'm ready to move into the phase of card pulls. We've been in this conversation, I feel like, long enough, and I want to make time to do an intuitive card pull for you. The card deck that I'm going to use is called it's called the Divine Feminine or something like that. It's full of women, both historical and mythical, that have existed, stories that have existed way, way, way back, but have been buried. So maybe their stories haven't been told. Megan Watterson is a beautiful resource who has, I think she has a PhD and literally studied these stories and brought them forth and made this into a deck. And so I love to use this not to tell the future, not as like a tarot, but to use it to inform my healing path and just see if it can reveal something to me that I can work on, or that a next layer of healing, and another way that the spirit can speak to me or through me. What will help me unlock my next level of abundance with sensuality and intimacy? Okay, that's our question. All right, while I shuffle, I'm going to tell you guys, I have created a group. It's called the Authentic Feminine. And in the group, we focus on the 3 pillars: intimacy, sensuality, and feminine intuition. They all weave together like a beautiful braid. They all weave together and support us in living our most aligned path. It supports women typically who have done some level of personal development, but know that they love to be supported in the feminine. And it's definitely for women who want to be treated like the answers are within them, who are not there to just take from an expert and, don't want to consult their inner knowing. And the purpose of the group is to help you go into the next level with your sensuality, your intimacy, and your feminine intuition, to amplify all areas of your life, your leadership, your business, as well as your romantic relationship. And of course, it affects your relationship everywhere else, your mothering, your sisters, your friends, all of the things. So this is my favorite way to work with people, and absolutely like an intimate, beautiful space where people experience massive transformation. So I'll tell you a little bit more about it, but let's dive into Carrie's. Okay, Carrie, I got Queen Esther. I love this. So she is from the Old Testament of the Bible, for anybody watching and doesn't know. And the phrase that goes with her is her title is like the Morning Star, and then her phrase is, my ego is in service of my soul, and I trust my soul's divine timing. My ego is in service of my soul, and I trust my soul's divine timing. Oh, that's so beautiful. So what's dropping in right now, and I'm going to channel in, and those of you who said yes, I'm going to access your energy. I should have said that already. What I'm hearing is with the ego, and I'm wondering if you know that term. I'm not sure if you do, Carrie, but ego refers to like the part of your brain that seeks to keep you safe. And so what's coming through here is there's a lot involved when it comes to sex that is trying to keep you safe. And it's a wrestle for you. And so there's an invitation to like, oh, put your hand on your heart and love up that part of yourself. Like all the messages, even the ones that are saying things like your body is not right, or you can't, or don't do that, or you're weird, or you're bad, or you're broken, all that messaging, you're not enough, you're not wanted, all that stuff is actually there because this part of you is trying to keep you safe. And can you love that part of you? You don't have to love the message, but love that part of you that really, really wants you to be safe. That is valuable. That matters. And so the corresponding sentence is, I trust my soul's divine timing. The healing of our sensuality and sexuality, our pleasure, our intimacy, these deep inner like puzzle pieces as they need to come in and lock in and then begin to expand, and all of that. The process of that is so precious. It's your journey, your timing. And so I hear an invitation in this for you to trust the timing, to trust that your soul is in charge of this timing. I see the soul as a unification of body and spirit. The timing is perfect. And I would invite you as like a tangible piece to walk away from with this is to compassion, compassion, compassion. In the folder, what's it called? Files, folders, something like that. In Women Manifesting Intimacy in the group, there's a folder or files tab. I can't remember what it says. And there's a self-compassion letter in there. That's a great way to begin to apply self-compassion. And I would go and utilize that, get started. If you hear like, okay, self-compassion, but I don't really know like how to do that, how do I give myself self-compassion, start with that letter. It's great. I actually use it with my clients too, like in the work with me. It's like, okay, let's write the letter. And that's a great way so that you can remind yourself that your ego is in the service of your soul, and you trust your soul's divine timing. Everyone else listening, you can activate all these things in yourself too. It's not just for Carrie. So everyone take a deep breath. Take what serves you, leave the rest. Let that integrate into your cells, into your soul. And so it is. And so it is right now, that healing, that abundance with sensuality. So yes, you guys, the group space is so beautiful. If you want to deepen into this, like we can sit around in a Facebook group and chat and have conversations. And honestly, like the way that I work is if I could just like heal up every single part of you with this, and from this moment forth, you will go forward and have an amazing sex experience forever after. I would do it. I would. But it doesn't work that way. It takes time. It takes integrating. It takes being in community with other women. And what I do is I guide you through a coursework over 10 months. I guide you through this coursework that dives deep into your intimacy, into your sensuality, and into your feminine intuition. And then we have one-on-one calls as well, where I'm supporting you with whatever it is that comes up, whatever it is that feels most pertinent to you. And in this space, women are setting outcomes. We call them outcomes, not goals. And then we're taking little bite-sized intentions and steps each month towards those goals, towards those desires of our heart. It feels more like manifesting than doing. It doesn't feel like we're training for a marathon by any means, because it's more about what's happening from the neck down. And that's why I've structured it this way, so we can kind of like bask in it. It's like a womb, right? 10 months. That was on purpose. Oh, this is so funny. I knew I put the abundance card. So if you're just joining in, I drew an abundance card right before I started, which informed the question that I was going to ask about these cards. And as soon as I put it back into the deck, I was like, this is the one for Patricia. But I was like, oh, why am I thinking that? And I shuffled it twice and then I pulled it. Okay, this is Lakshmi, the goddess of abundance. I believe she comes from Hindu roots. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe so. Okay, her name is the goddess of abundance. And her phrase is, I choose to feel abundant. Wealth is an inside job. I choose to feel abundant. Wealth is an inside job. Mm-mm-mm. So what's coming through with this one for you is this, I keep hearing law of abundance, and the law of abundance is, as I've come to understand it, a law of the universe, which states that there is always an abundance of everything. It actually just means a lot. There's always a lot of everything that you could ever want. There's always a lot of it. So there's always a lot of money, just like there's also always a lot of dirt, and there's also always a lot of air particles, and there's always a lot of clouds, and there's always a lot of homes. There's always a lot of people. There's always a lot of anything I want. There's always a lot of food. There's always a lot of resources. When I think of this in relation to how can I experience abundance with my sensuality and intimacy, which is like from the neck down. Um, and I think about you and your energy. It's like, how much pleasure can you possibly stand? That's the question I think you need to start asking yourself. What I'm seeing for you is an expansion of the container that is you, your capacity to receive all of the abundance, to receive all of the goodness. And I believe that comes with regard to both money as well as like inner stuff, like the values, like joy and peace and well-being and fullness and freedom and happiness and prosperity and quality and connection and all the things that we want in our lived experience. So again, that tangible piece to walk away with is ask yourself, how much pleasure can I possibly stand? Like I would start asking yourself that in every situation, like write it everywhere. Plus the reality of the law of abundance is all of that is always there. But we don't always feel that way, do we? It's we pull ourselves away. We bury our own head. It's not that like the universe buries itself from us. So that's always there to us. It's just, where do I put my focus? Where do I put my energy? Can I actually expand my capacity to receive pleasure like crazy, right? Love that so much. This is so interesting. This like repeat. Are you guys see me shuffling like a crazy woman over here? We got Esther again. You got Esther again. So I actually what I want to do is pull Esther and correlate her with somebody else too. Oh, this is so fun. Do you know about Thecla? You are such a Thecla. If you don't know about her, you got to look her up. Nilzara Thecla. You got to go read her story. You have to. I'm not going to share it on here, but you guys, seriously, she was so cool. And her story's not found in, typical scriptures. She was amazing, amazing. She worked with Paul in the New Testament times, after the death of Christ. And anyway, I'm not going to tell you the stories, but the stories are so cool. She's with a lion. She like tames the lions and stuff and baptizes herself. Okay. The prophetess of true power. And I feel like, okay, this is in relation to you have your ego showing up, helping you be safe. and you have your soul's divine timing. So all that stuff we already locked in, right? And again, everyone can call this in, call in whatever you want to receive from this. This is like, there's energy healing happening. So if you want it, take it, say yes to it. Okay. And then we're looking at the ego and the soul's divine timing in relation to the prophetess of true power. I call my power back from all times and all places. I am my own. Oh my gosh, you are such a force for power. You literally are a Thecla. Like I'm like, oh, I have all these chills. You are such a force. Mm. Okay, so when we think about this all in relation to your intimacy and sensuality, there's a lot in your ancestry where women were cut off from the core truth of who they really are, even though they may have appeared tough and fierce, and they felt so blocked and restricted and caged. And the key for you is to bring forward the softness, the power of the feminine, that it doesn't have to look like clawing people's eyeballs out. It doesn't have to look like plowing through people. It's literally you being the vessel, which you are so connected to God, and you always have been the whole time I've ever known you. And it's having that connection and letting that extend all the way down to your clitoris, to literally like I can be a goddess of pleasure. I can be powerful even when I'm like in ecstasy. I can be powerful even when all I'm doing is receiving the king that is my spouse. So okay, what's it tangible for you? Everyone take a deep breath, breathe that in. It's so good. It was that visual, wasn't it? Like from heaven to my clitoris. Yeah, I totally said that, didn't I? That's the piece, though. That's what I'm hearing is activate that. It's not in the scriptures, right? So then we're like, well, I don't know. Is that a thing? Did God have sex? Did Jesus have sex? Like, I don't know. How am I supposed to know what's the right way? And we just get to be taught from on high and taught through our bodies, which the Spirit speaks to us through our bodies. So I love that. Oh, everyone take a deep breath, breathe that in, breathe that in. When I do that, when I say breathe that in, I'm actually picturing it going, like activating every cell of my body and every strand of DNA in my body, like the DNA is being altered, and down to every atom in my body, which I believe are like particles of light that were brought together to make up me and make up everything that exists. And so I like go down to that very little level, and then when I breathe it in, I see it being received like through all of that stuff, like total reset, total healing. Because why not? Like, because of course we can. If we believe, then it is. And then we can do it again and again, and sometimes we have to do it again and again, and that's okay too, because we're still plunged into a very imperfect world, aren't we? The last thing I want to say is, you guys, if being immersed in something like this is interesting to you, like you have a sense for the feeling of who I am and how I work, let's get on to a call. Just DM me and we'll set up a time. And I'd love to hear your journey. And I'm not going to sit and preach at you like I do on here, because I can't hear your voices. What I prefer is to hear your story and kind of help support you. Like, what have you tried so far, and what still calls to you? What do you still feel like, could be better, isn't up to the fullest potential you want it to be? And how can we help you move forward to that? What are those next steps? And I always hold those calls with the intention that, like, look, it might be me, it might be my program, it might be something else, it might be a book, it might be that there's some other preparatory steps that would be a better fit before you hop into the group space. And so yeah, reach out to me, let's talk about that. Of course, that does come, it is a high ticket program, and it's my highest level way of working with me. And if you hear that and you automatically feel like your body sees up, still DM me, because I have other ways that you can work with me. I have some automated programs and things like that that I've created so that, you know, money doesn't need to be a barrier for people. Okay. Because everyone needs this healing. Here's what we got. I don't even know how to say her name. Machig Labdron, the diamond-hearted Dakini. I have to look this up every time I pull this. I can't remember what Dakini means. All right, let's Google it really quick. Dakini in Sanskrit. Okay, so probably she's Hindu of some sort. Dakini in Sanskrit means sky dweller or sky dancer, and is the most sacred aspect of the feminine principle in Tibetan Buddhism. Oh, so maybe she's like Tibetan or Buddhist or something, embodying both humanity and divinity in feminine form. So that's what a Dakini is. And you could certainly like write her name down and Google her story. Machig Labdron. Okay. Diamond hearted. I love that. All right. Her phrase is, I see the light in my own darkness. I face my ego beliefs to feel free. Another about ego. That's really like, look at how fat this stack is. There's like, I don't know, 100 cards or something. They're not all about ego. This is really interesting. So, I see the light in my own darkness. I face my ego beliefs to feel free. No, I've been dealing with a lot of that first message personally. I see the light in my own darkness. So I feel like what I need to share in this is like, let's take some steps back. Like, what the crap does that mean? I see the light in my own darkness. Like if we take some steps back, there's a concept in scriptures like, I give unto men weakness that they may become strengths. And the reverse of that is also true. The weakness is the strength. It's just the shadow side. And the strength is the weakness. It's just the light side. One side of it creates more outcomes we do want, and one side of it creates more outcomes we don't want. And when we can step aside from the moralistic judgment, meaning when we can stop gauging everything as good or bad, right or wrong, and kind of go like this, because there are some clear things that are good and bad and right and wrong, but a lot of things that we judge the crap out of, especially parts of ourselves, parts of our past, it doesn't really serve us to judge it as good or bad, right or wrong. What serves us is to learn from it. So we take this and we go, okay, everything is even, everything is level. There are things that created outcomes I liked, and there are things that created outcomes I did not like. There are things that served me in my highest and greatest good, and things that didn't seem to serve me in my highest and greatest good. And how can we reach into that part of us, the parts that we want to hide away, or we want to push away, or we think if anybody knew these things about me, if anybody really knew how my mind works, or knew, you know, how much I worry or how much anxiety I have or whatever, they would never love me. Like, we can't shine light on those parts, but what this is asking you to do is shine light on those parts. And I find that that's actually extremely crucial when it comes to sexual healing. I mean, my husband and I, like, I know every desire he's ever had. And that was a painful process at first to go through, because I have a strong moral compass. My right and wrong meter are very strong. It was very intense for me. And you may have read my story about how I called it, I let my husband turn me into a vixen. I thought it was very clever, but it's also very true. Like, I had such a strong right wrong meter about so much of sexuality. I didn't know how to take the counterfeit stuff and clean it up and bring it into my marriage so that my marriage could be enriched. And I had to learn how to do that process. Part of that was bringing forward Well, what desires have I had that I've judged? What desires have I had that I like want to bury away forever? What things happened in my past that I wish never happened? How can I bring those forward in sacredness and vulnerability? And so, as I share all that, I want to say, because I don't know you, I don't know if you have a partner or whatever. I know that not every partner is in a space and ready to actually hold a safety for that kind of vulnerability. And so you get to test that out, and um the best gauge for that is your own inner guidance, right? Like your gut, listen and see, like pray, get into that divinity within, that feminine intuition. That's why that's such a crucial part to the three parts, is feminine intuition. Get into that space and ask, like, can I share this right now? It might feel risky, but like, am I ready to take the risk? Can I possibly take that risk and let him into these parts of me? That's what I would encourage you to do. And then more than anything, because I don't even know if you have a partner, maybe you don't even have one right now, we're talking about some hypothetical future scenario, I don't know. But this piece, the second one, I face my ego beliefs to feel free. The most important thing you can do with the parts of you that you feel like you have to hide, which we all have those, right, is to bring them forth to light for yourself. And can you love yourself? Because that is the key to freedom. I have some family members who have some serious darkness. Like, my right wrong meter goes off like crazy. I have some family members, I tell my kids, like, do not, like, if that person comes around you, you run to any nearby adult that's not them. Like, I have some legitimate like psycho people in my family, and I've been thinking about, because I have that, I think about these things all the time. I think about like when somebody is so dark or so far off their own like seeming sacred path because they are creating horrible scenarios for people everywhere they go. um how does somebody like that heal, you know? And I was going through this process with reclaiming some parts of my own darkness, and literally, like she says here, seeing the light in my own darkness. And I was thinking, how can I do this? It's scary to go to the parts of me that feel dark and like call them back into myself, because I carry a deep fear that I'm going to become like crazy like some of my family members. It's like, I grew up with that person, I knew that person as a kid, and they weren't like this, and I don't know what led them to becoming like, from that little innocent thing to this horrible monster thing, and I'm scared. It's scary, right? But as I really prayed and pondered on that, was like, I want to know, like, how would somebody like that heal? It was like the same way. We have to call in all that darkness and love it and shine light on it and love those parts of us, not love the actions, but love those parts of us, right? And then make amends first with ourself, which in the case of some of my family members would probably lead them to prison. Like, amends would be prison. But in my case, probably in your case, making that amends looks like loving myself more. It looks like saying sorry to myself for beating myself up for something that happened 50 years ago. It looks like, it might look like some real amends, right? Like maybe even ways where I feel like I can't make amends, and then I go and I serve a community to make amends. Like I might go serve an elderly community or something to just like sanctify my time. And I learned a lot of that through the 12-step recovery journey that I have been on, where there's a tremendous amount of shame and darkness and all the things that you get to heal and work through. But it's the same process for somebody who has like maybe minimal darkness or lesser darkness, whatever we want to say. Like, we get to call in this wholeness. It would be the same process for my sweet loved ones that I pray my guts out for that are so lost. Like, just that wholeness, it's reclaiming all parts of ourselves. And what happens when we don't do that is those parts of us are fragmented. They're like split off in all these ways. They're it's like our spirit, our whole energy is shattered into a bunch of different pieces. And so this process brings us into wholeness and fullness. And then in our sensuality, in our sex, in our relationship, it's like a beautiful way to seal that healing, a beautiful way to call in even more healing, to bring in even more wholeness as we go to deeper layers of closeness and connection and intimacy. So I hope that spoke to you, Cora, and I hope that, again, take a deep breath, all of us. You want to receive that, receive that. Let's call in wholeness. Who wants to be fragmented? Nobody does, right? Oh, my loves. Okay, I've been talking for over an hour. Sometimes I surprise myself that I can do that. Thank you guys for being in this journey with me. If you feel to, share in the comments with how the card readings landed with you or anything that was shared here. And if you'd rather share it with me in DM, you know that you can do that. That invitation is always open. And thank you for showing up and adding so much value to this community, because something that I know is that there's a lot of eyeballs watching and there's not as many women speaking and saying stuff, and that's okay. That's not a judgment to those of you who feel like I cannot even let people know I'm on this call. Like I cannot let people know. I don't even want anyone to hear this. I got my earbuds in and I'm trying to be busy while also trying to like actually maybe open the door for a little bit of healing or change perspective. There's a lot of women that are watching that don't feel like they can comment. They don't feel like they can be out loud about it. And so those of you who are willing to share, it's such a blessing to those who feel like they can't yet. And we'll just hold that sacred space for them, that you guys can reach out when you want and when it feels right. That sacred, honoring that sacred divine timing, right? Like Esther. So I have a feeling you're all going to get off of here and go do some awesome Googling. And we'd love you too, if you want to share your stories you found about Thecla and Esther and Magdron and all these women that we did card pulls on. That would be epic too. I love you guys. And I hope that some of you will come over and join us in the authentic feminine space, because it's like this times a million, because you get to actually share your voice and stuff. So love you all. Thanks. Bye.